Martin, I am so excited that you're here. I want to start, and I don't know exact air date, but the Super Bowl is always relevant, so it doesn't matter. But I wanted to kind of talk about the key creator moments you saw from the Super Bowl, maybe some of the ones that were highlighted a lot, and maybe some of the ones that you just thought were the coolest.
Yeah, no, well, first of all, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here again. I think this is it's always fun to talk about kind of post mortem, right? Because as we're leading up to
Hmm.
it, if you try to schedule one of these, you're probably gonna get, probably 10% of attention because there's so many moving parts leading up to.
Oh, for
But
sure.
yeah, this Super Bowl, from my perspective, right, I saw the influx of creators. And I don't know if that started last year, the year before, but what I'm really starting to see now is creators being more vocal about their willingness and want to attend. I think in the past, maybe people looked at Super Bowl as like this coveted thing that only a select few get to go to. You have to be an A-list celebrity or you have to be super rich to be able to go there. But now creators are putting themselves out there. I mean, I had a creator reach out, or not even reach out, but on TikTok posted like, whoever does influencer and talent marketing at the NFL, you need to work with, and like they get very specific with it. And I'm like,
Yes.
how do they know? So I kudos to creators for understanding the game and knowing like who to talk to, get on our radar because it works. And then, one thing that I also find fascinating about this creator boldness, right, is that now they have fans that champion for them. Like, yes, I want to see you there. Like Rihanna Super Bowl, they were like, I want to be at the Super Bowl because I'm a big NFL fan, quote unquote, because they wanted to see Rihanna. But
Hmm. Hmm.
we
Facts.
saw their fan journey, and some actually made it there just by putting themselves out there. So you're starting to see that more, and I appreciate the candor and the boldness from these creators because it's working.
Well, I mean, in the attention economy, right? It's impossible to get people's attention unless you're
Yeah,
bold in some ways, right?
yeah,
The adage is like, oh, if you just put up good stuff and people will notice. I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm a PR person and a realist, and I go, yeah, but if you know the right person and you talk to that person, you get their attention, three levels ahead.
yeah. No, I mean that's smart. I mean, like I said, the cleverness and I give them all the credit in the world for really paying attention and understanding the game to know whose radar to get on. Kudos to
Hmm.
them for really speaking up and being vocal about it. Yeah.
In your time there, what are certain pieces of content or certain things creators have done that stand out, or just trends you are seeing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like to harken back to giving credit to creators by actually calling them creators, right? There's
Yeah.
influencers, there's content creators, and there's like, but I'm really seeing the level of creativity and the level of um, you know, taking their audience with them into the game, into our world, right? I can't speak for
Hmm.
everyone's world that they work in, but figuring out ways to understand like, hey, this will work for NFL. I want to be on your radar, whether it's the really fun recaps or the explainer videos where you're telling your audience about the NFL or nothing about the NFL or sports, but you want to learn. So like, tell me about this and just being super authentic. I think that's a real trend that we're seeing across the economy, right? Like the more transparent you are and saying like, I remember the days when people used to say, um, I want to get on someone's radar. I want to work with you because I'm the biggest X fan, right? But now they're like, I know
Yeah.
nothing about your sport. Woo me. Like bring me in. Like how can I engage? How can I bring my audience, right? And I think that level of transparency is what we're seeing across and it really resonates, right? Because what we want is retention, what we want is engagement. We want is, your audience to know that this isn't just like a paid moment. This is more of like you're going on a journey with me. So as much as we can see creators being real and saying like I never worked with this brand before but come with me on this experience, I think that's really true and it rings true for the audience too because they're like you've never talked about football before so why are you talking about it now, so then to see them like engaging and then they come out to a game or they meet a player or they have like the full kind of ride and their fans can go with them. I think that's the best part that we're seeing is a new trend of that exploring and discovery.
Yeah, there's questions I want to ask later about how you expand the audience of something that's already massive. But
Mhm.
before I ask that question, I just kind of want to ask the question: what drew you into the role?
Yeah, that's a great one. And I think it's everything I just said about the creator's journey, right? For me,
Yeah.
not having a traditional like I wasn't one of those kids like one day I'm going to work at the NFL. That was never on my radar, right? And I think that's what drew me to the role because I came from a world of different experiences, right? I worked in TV and film. I did some sports marketing early. I worked in music, right? So bringing all these worlds together and converging, I knew that I like to call, some people call it different things, influencer talent. I like to say like we sit at the intersection, right? We're at the intersection of it all. So we get to converge the world. So I knew the background I had was going to be able to bring a unique perspective. I didn't have to be the biggest and most avid football fan to do the work I do. I like to say the fact that I do know these different worlds, I do sit on the fringes of it. I do know that
Mm-hmm.
everyone isn't like tuning in just because it's Sunday. They're tuning in because their favorite celebrities in the audience, or
Yeah.
they like the outfits that the guys wear and they're a big fan of this person. Like I know the other things that draw people in were going to be important, so I treat everyone as if they're discovering the game for the first time through different avenues, and I knew the perspective I brought to the table was going to help people experience the game and learn the game through different avenues. So I knew I could bring that to the table.
Well, yeah, you have a broad and demonstrated skill set. Like if I'm the NFL and I look at all the different places that you've worked, I go, okay, of course, you know the right people. This is the exact thing we're trying to do. This
Yeah.
is going to make some sense. There was one point, and I kind of want to pinpoint on it, and I'm going to make an analogy here, and let's hope I land the plane.
Yeah.
Um, but and it's not football related, but it will come back to it. When I'm watching college basketball this year, 95% of the college basketball I'm watching is women's college basketball. And it's
Mm-hmm.
because the storylines are better. I
Yeah.
know the players. I know the background. I know who doesn't like who's
Mhm.
doing this, all of that. And I think it comes back to sports marketing, which is if you have a story to tell,
Yeah.
right? That is something that's going to resonate better than if you just are rooting for laundry or
Yeah.
jerseys or something that's happened for 30 years. This is how you continuously bring in new generations, because if you have something that allows you to connect, right?
Right.
That's why I am bullish on women's college basketball exceeding
Yeah.
men's college basketball,
Yeah.
because when you're staying there for 3 or 4 years, that's how you create rivalry and tension.
Yeah. Hmm. No, that's really important. No, you hit it right on the head. I mean, storytelling, right? We look at our players, obviously extensions, but also like a huge part of the game. But I think a few years ago we really emphasized on the helmet off storytelling, right? Because
Yeah,
our guys wear helmets, you don't see their face, you don't know who they
it's
are,
tough.
right? So like really digging in, understanding who they are, where they're from, what emotional stories they have. You've probably seen Hard Knocks, where you can kind of get a deeper, in depth,
Yeah.
more insightful look at what the players are doing and with the teams and how they kind of come up with like who's going to make the roster. You have the quarterback series that that came out. You got to get more in depth about like
Mm-hmm.
quarterbacks have to go through. So I think more to your point, the more storylines, the more storytelling we could do as a league, and and show who our players are, where they're from, and how it's relatable, right? Because as you all know, stories are I may not be, a peak athlete, who's the 1% that make it, but I'm from that same community. I have the same kind of upbringing. That's relatable. Yeah, so that draws you in. And a little bit else about me, like I grew up the same way. Like I was more of a fan of a person, right? Like I grew up
Mm-hmm.
a Michael Jordan fan, right? So I was more of a
Yeah.
fan of a person. And if my person happened to go to another team, then I go, people hate to hear that now. They're like, I'm a diehard such and such fan. I'm like, I like that guy's story. So I'm gonna go, I like that girl's story. I'm gonna go with them wherever they go because of them. I believe in them and I'm a fan of them. So I'm probably in the
Oh,
minority when I say that, but I think that's what makes it more important to follow. Yeah.
no, I think that's a millennial Gen Z thing for
Yeah.
sure. For me, it's like I am still a Damian Lillard fan. So
Yeah.
when he goes from Portland to Milwaukee, oh,
Yep.
I guess I've gone to 5 Bucks games this year.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
mean, that's just, I'm like, cool, he lives closer to me.
Yeah.
Also, I'm a Pistons fan, and you just have to find like somebody else to root for during the season. but true, like
Yeah.
also when you were talking about quarterback and you're talking about all
Yeah.
these shows, I'm an even bigger fan of the
Mm.
in-season Hard Knocks because of
Yes.
just
Yes.
all the things that are going. Like the one with the Dolphins this year, it
Yeah.
was
Dolphins
especially
great.
compelling. Yeah,
Hmm.
but props to quarterback for for showing Kirk Cousins swag.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
we're both from like the same area of Michigan. We're like 20 minutes
Oh,
apart, and so like I deeply understand the Coal
yeah.
Cash swag.
Oh, yeah. Cole's cash. Yeah.
But it's like if
Yeah.
you and I mean this with no disrespect, but if you have a means of storytelling where you can make Kirk Cousins relatable, I'm like,
Yeah.
you are doing it.
One thing I'll say about that is, everyone has a relatable story. I mean, if you
Yeah.
if you go back to like content creators, right? When you want to build your audience and they tell you like whether it's starting a podcast, whether it's creating content online, if you have a small niche, thing that you're into, if it's like cats or whatever,
Facts.
like
Oh
there's
yeah.
an audience for it, right? So you just can't be afraid to tell your story because you don't know how many people are going to resonate with it and are going to relate to it. And I think that's what we're seeing, and going back to authenticity, right? So just
Yeah.
being unafraid or unapologetic about telling your story, and not worrying about whether people are going to think this is quirky, like no, there's a million people just like you, right? So I
Hmm.
think that's all relatable.
Oh, absolutely, especially in the Midwest.
Yeah.
You know, but so you have Creator of the Week. You have specific programs.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that and just kind of the formality of setting up programs to really highlight people. And I do like that we're evolving in how we talk about people so they're not. I think the term influencer, right, was well intended until
Yeah.
it stopped being well intended.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's why I like to make sure I'm specific about when we're talking about creators, because there's lifestyle
Yeah.
influencers who will go to things and you just want to see their every move. And then there's people who actually produce
Hmm.
content
Yeah.
and edit and spend a lot of time in storyboarding. And like, if I go here, this is what the concept is going to look like. Yeah. Creator of the Week was a fun one to launch this past season, because it was essentially that. Like, we work with a ton of creators, YouTube obviously being massive in the creator sphere, and the type of content creators they work with. So I like to call us the matchmakers, right? Like, being able to
Yeah.
pair different clubs. So what we were able to do was each week we sent out a different creator to a game, to a home game for any number of teams. Each week they got to create content in their own unique way, short form content for YouTube to really grow their YouTube Shorts program. And essentially, we let them be themselves, right? And these clubs that want to get younger, they want to tap in Gen Z, Gen A, they want to work with creators, but sometimes they don't know how. They don't know how to reach them. They don't know like how to approach them with the offer, with the opportunity. So we played the ultimate middleman, the ultimate wingman.
Hmm.
We sold them on the concept of, listen, trust us. We kind of vetted these creators. We understand, their audience. We know how they're going to speak to yours. And maybe they're not the biggest um, Indianapolis Colts fan or the Miami Dolphins fan, but this person has an audience that you want to reach. They don't
Yep.
know your team. So this is an opportunity for you to show them, for you to kind of woo them and date them and show them what you have to offer. So it was great for clubs like, hey, this is what we do. And then bring them in and kind of show them the facilities, bring them into the locker room, bring them into the stadium
Hmm.
early when no fans are there, show them some of the jerseys. We went to Tampa Bay and they had their throwback jersey night, and they had these beautiful creamsicle jerseys. And so they got to
Yeah.
gift creators with a custom creamsicle jersey. So it was just like, this is who we are. Right. And I think on the club side, they were like, wow, we get to kind of show off our offerings and our wares and, get our audience engaged. But on the flip side with the creators, they're like, wow, I've never experienced, a club kind of rolling out the red carpet for me. And then I also get to bring my audience in,
Hmm.
and going back to what I said earlier, in a unique way. I get to bring my fans on a journey with me. So if I'm discovering, what it is to be in a suite at a Chargers game, then hey, like, this is what, my fans are going to get to see today. So it's very authentic. And then I also, since I'm a content creator, I'm going to come up with some fun, cool content, whether it's family friendly or it's, man on the street. I get to interview fans and do what I do best in an authentic way. And I get to reach new audiences through this NFL fan. So each week it was fun because we got to do that with a different creator each time. But it was also fun to have these conversations with the clubs week after week. Like, listen, you're in for a treat. We're going to bring in someone to your world, and they're going to get exposure for you, and you're going to get exposure to audiences. So it was a match made in heaven that we're grateful that we got to do. It was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, and you learn ideas from other creators, right? When you have so many different people, um, interacting with your brand, it gives you an opportunity to go, okay, oh, interesting. You see it from this point of view or this lens, and that will give us ideas. But the other thing too is I harp on this so much in PR is it's the mutual exchange of value. The
Yeah.
thing that a lot of brands don't understand and you understand so well is that you have something to offer that's
Yeah.
non-monetary, right?
Yes. Yes.
And you have access, you have something that I think you do a really great job of making sure that you understand the value of the creator, but that
Yes.
the creator understands the value that you provide, just like YouTube, all the partners. There's
Yep.
always a mutual exchange there, right? Because I think there are a lot of brands that aren't aware or aren't self-aware. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
if we just used what we have to amplify
Yep.
people, we're going to get a pretty interesting result out of it. And
Yeah.
so, yes, it doesn't. It really doesn't cost much. I mean, I think that's the universal takeaway. It doesn't cost much monetarily. There's time, there's energy putting in together a program. I do not want to diminish that putting together that program could not have been
Yeah.
easy, right?
Yeah.
There are logistics, there are hard
Yeah.
teams. You
Yes.
are a large organization. So I want to just like pause for a second and just probably like deep breath. None of that is easy.
Right. No, no, no. That's the behind the scene work from many people,
Yeah.
many negotiations to make sure that it comes off as seamless. But yeah, there's a beauty in, like you said, understanding your value, understanding your worth,
Mm-hmm.
right? You assume sometimes because someone, I mean, listen, I'll be frank, some of these creators have bigger followings than the NFL social account, right? So it's like, oh
Yep.
wow, we get to work with this creator who has 50 million subscribers, or this audience that reaches Gen Z, Gen A in a way that we never could before. But then you also have to look back and like, we're also the NFL, right? We arguably own a
Mm-hmm.
day of the week. We arguably own, probably starting to own more than one day a week, right? Just in
Four or
terms,
five
yeah,
eventually, right?
yeah, exactly, right? On the whole week. So in fairness, we do offer that scale, but at the same time, like going back to what you said about non-monetary, it's we try to offer experiences that your money can't buy.
Yeah.
You can't exchange what it means to have intimate experiences or conversations, like you get to meet players on the team, or you get to talk to the coach, or if you're like an avid fan, you get to announce a draft pick. And there's
Mm.
things that
Oh, those are great.
you can't put a dollar amount on, that we feel real comfortable that if you look back, like you said, take a step back and look at all of our offerings, like, oh wow, this is a pretty unique offering, right? We get to expose you to, you know, huge fan bases. There's a lot of creators that we work with who, you know, their job is to create content, right? So if we're giving you a prime opportunity at the biggest moment, it's Monday Night Football, it's Sunday Night Football, it's, this huge matchup, and you get to be there present on the field.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a pretty cool experience, that we can't put a dollar amount on.
No, I mean, I've toured Allen Park with the Lions multiple times.
Yeah.
It is a different experience to be in the building, to
Yeah.
create content, to work with a team, to understand what's going on behind the scenes. Some of
Yeah.
it is mundane, right?
Right.
It's funny. It is an office,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
right? And so it is almost even just that perspective, knowing like, oh, okay, yeah, this is just an office. You're clocking in, you're clocking out, and
Yeah.
then you're like, no, this is tough.
Yeah.
But it's just seeing things up close and seeing personalities. I really early in my career, I was really blessed to like be able to interview Nate Burleson when he
Oh
was
yeah.
on the Lions.
Okay.
I was like, yeah, you're going to be in media,
Yeah. Yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah.
But
One other thing I want to mention too, just piggybacking off of like what we
yeah,
offer, is also it's a stamp of credibility. We're also the NFL.
100.
So if you work with us, I'm sure brands are like, oh, you work with the NFL. So I
Hmm.
mean, naturally come work with us, right? So we also offer that. So not, again, something you can't put a price tag on, of the
Yeah.
proximity and the authenticity and the stamp of credibility of working with the NFL. Now go take that to your brand partners, right? When we talk to
Oh
reps,
yeah.
or creators themselves directly, they're like, man, I'm now doing XYZ 1 2 3, and I'm just like, wow. And they're like, no, thank you. You guys gave us that
Hmm.
opportunity. So now these brands were like, we would love to work with you. So we also offer that opportunity for scale.
Oh yeah, I mean, you offer a ton of visibility and a huge built-in fan base, but I like the humility that you also bring in and going, yeah, we're not going to discount the fact that you have a ton of followers, right? This is
Yeah.
mutual,
Yeah.
but I did like that you were talking too about, it's not just team specific, right? When I saw
Mhm.
Frankie LaPena doing stuff, I'm like, I know you're from Michigan. You're
Yeah.
doing stuff with the Ravens, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
I know you're not a Ravens fan,
Yeah.
but that stuff is hilarious. Like when he's got the green screen behind him.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is,
Rich. That's
I
rich.
mean, yeah, that stuff is funny.
I think that I mean, to your point, right? It's understanding that and it goes back to the clubs too of being willing, right? If you're a club and you're like,
Yeah.
I'm open to it, right? This guy's from Michigan, but
Hmm.
listen, we have a list of content creators who want to create content. Who's willing? And if you raise your hand and say I'm willing, here we go. We get to deliver you great content from a creator who may not hit your audience. I mean, who may not be from your local city, but
Yeah.
those out of market creators that can come in and add value and give you heightened awareness. And the success is proven with the virality of some of the stuff that Frankie's done and other creators like Adam W.
Hmm.
we work with. When you see
Yeah.
those numbers, then you get a lot more hands raised the next time. We're like, hey, we're coming back. Any volunteers? Then you're seeing 2 hands go up.
I think that's a good point because what you are is a collection of 32 separate entities, right? With all different ownership, all different teams,
Yeah,
all different backgrounds.
yeah,
So, yes, but just like they say in a lot of different other ways, it's a copycat league when it comes to schemes. It's a copycat league when it comes to creators.
yeah,
And yeah, I'm going to be super jealous if I'm the one seeing Frank LaPena doing work from home. I'm doing this in air
yeah,
quotes. Work
yeah,
from home while he's in the stands.
yeah.
Yeah, that stuff is amazing. How do you how much how much control do you give creators versus like what's kind of like the background process there? Is it mostly like here's a couple guidelines and then just go for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, we like I said, I like creators. I tell them like we brought you here because we like who you are. We like the work you're
Yeah.
doing. We're not here to change you in any way. We want it to be authentic to your brand, your audience, and to you. We also want you to have fun. That's one thing I stress in every single call we have with creators and when we introduce them to clubs. Like we want you to walk away like I had a great time, I had a great experience. But a couple guardrails, no disparaging comments about the team that's hosting you. We look,
Obvious.
no disparaging comments about us in the league. And, there's things that we're trying to promote as a league that we want to make sure
Hmm.
are out right there and it doesn't feel like, anyone's taken away from that. But other than that, I mean, I don't think anyone's coming to do that, right? They're looking, no
No.
one is trying to sneak in and make us look bad. For the most part, they're just like, how far can we push the envelope on our creative? And some things we've had to say no to just for like security concerns. But other than that, it's like have fun, like go out there
Hmm.
and you're creative. They're coming with a host of ideas, right? So we're like, we don't want to limit or stifle your creativity at all. Bring all the ideas to the table and we'll figure out a way to do it within reason. Yeah, only a few things that we've had to say no to, but that was only for security and safety concerns. But for the most part, the creativity, like I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
We had a creator who was a competitive eater, right? For like he does the Lincoln's
Mm-hmm.
hot dog every year. So we were like, what can we do with the creator who has a big, food eating competition? So we connected him with the Raiders and they were like, man, our guys, come to practice, have it, their practice facility is where they have their meals. We should bring
Hmm.
him in. And again, this was a total collaboration. We'll bring him in and then we'll have him be like a health, like a dietitian and tell the guys like, here's a new way to eat. And he came in and he scarfed down probably 20 hot dogs within the course of like 2 minutes, and you see the
Yeah.
reaction on their faces. I mean, this one went viral because it was a creator who
Hmm.
was allowed to do what he wanted to do, meet the players and have fun and be unique. And, I think that's when we get the best and most rich content out of guys when we let them be themselves, but also the club is like, we're all in. Like, how can we engage more? And like you said, being a copycat league, like we hope more clubs are like, yes. Oh, they gave you the linemen. All right, we're going to give you the receivers. They
Hmm.
gave receivers. We're going to give you like we want that competitive nature to kick in because it's only going to benefit us more when clubs are dialed in because they ultimately like open the reins of creativity. So we're like, let's keep pushing, let's keep doing more. So hopefully you'll see more and more creators very soon. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of some things that are already cooking for next season. Yeah,
I like it. Yeah. I mean, that was going to be my next question. Obviously, you're going to keep doing that again. But shouts to Lyman. Like, Jason
yeah,
Kelsey is hilarious.
yeah,
Lane Johnson. Like, there are some hilarious linemen in that league.
yeah,
Yeah, Bakhtiari
yeah.
in the beer chugs in Milwaukee. So, uh, shifting gears for a second, because this is I alluded to it earlier, and I wanted to talk about it. And this goes along with everything. It's how do you keep growing
Mm,
something that is not, because no one wants to use the word peak, but you are
mm,
clearly above and beyond any other American pro sports league. So do you look to other leagues globally? Do you take cues from other places? What keeps the NFL aspiring to grow audience when it's at this level?
yeah, no, I think we definitely take cues, right? We look at what's going on in the landscape. Of course, we'd be silly not to. But I think one area of growth for us, right, is between September and February, right? It's all on, right? I have friends who are fans of other sports. Who are like, I don't even start watching other sports until
Mhm.
after you guys are done, right? So figuring out a way for us to have always on programming, and I say that throughout the season, but that this is our consistent message when we're talking to clubs too. Like, yeah, that's great. You had this person, that person at the game, but like, what else are you doing, right? And keep pushing us to have it consistently throughout the calendar year, right? Not just the NFL year, but like, what is
Yeah.
the off season plan? Like, what are we doing? In those summer months leading up to, what are we doing in the spring? And I know it's like busy because coming off a Super Bowl, or you're preparing for combine and there's draft, but there's so many months out of the year that we're not the the one thing that people are looking at. Like, so how do we figure out opportunities there? So for us, it's like, how do we eventize our activations, right? How do we
Hmm.
continue to up level them and take them outside of just that NFL calendar year? So, and then how do we grow that internationally, right? With our games and our
Correct.
the game growing internationally, like, how do we take certain things that we're doing? So last year we worked with this content creator. His name is Destroying. He does this one-on-one tour with wide receivers and DBs. He does it for the youth and the community. So what we did was we took that around in the summer months. So we did a summer tour and a fall tour for the first time this year. But we took him to different cities and locations, partnered with clubs, and let him bring
Hmm.
out the community and basically have the kids compete against one another. And it was engaging. It was social. He grew his audience. Obviously, the clubs got to line with
Exactly.
him and grow and reach younger audiences. So for us, that's like a way to keep the narrative going outside of the NFL calendar year. So I think as we look for growth, again, not to be selfish, not saying we need to own, first we start with the day, then we have a week, and then, maybe we'll own some months, and then we'll own, a couple more months. So we're just incrementally growing, when we're on and when people are paying attention to us. And, I think that's the only way to do it, because going back to what we talked about, storytelling, then you have an opportunity to tell stories about players. What are they doing off season?
Yeah.
Helmet off content, because now you get to follow them. Like, it doesn't stop. Like, season ends and like, okay, I'm programmed to think about football, but no, we want, like,
Right.
what's this guy doing? How are you training? So if you're working out, I think that's where we continue to grow the game in those off months.
Yeah, it's that off-season time when you can get into the more authentic, the more culturally relevant stuff, right? You can
Yep.
you can you can do bigger things. I, I will say the draft, which I'm going to it next month. Like,
Yeah.
that's an event. That's a
Yeah.
party. That's
Huge.
something that keeps now that travels, right, and that's coming
Yep.
to Detroit where I am.
Yep.
Like, that's gonna be fun. Like, people will start talking about that 2 years in advance. We've had a countdown clock
Yeah. Oh
sitting
wow.
sitting on Woodward for like 2 years, telling
I
you,
love that.
just as a reminder,
Yeah.
it's coming, right? So that, I mean, that's owning a time in late April, right? It,
Yes.
it is it is fascinating to me, especially I thought the one in Nashville was so good, but it
Hmm.
was like, it's just owning a time when all you're doing is you're just reading off names. Now, it's
Hmm.
not that, right? It's the
Yeah.
speculation of,
Yeah.
it's the speculation. And as a Lions fan, most years that was our Super Bowl, because
Yeah.
it was hope. It was
Hope.
like,
Yeah.
ooh, could we get somebody good? Like,
Yes.
we're going to be picking eearly. Good. Well, we're going to know who we're going to have by 8:30.
Yeah.
But now, like, there are different expectations in Detroit. Yay. But do you start thinking about? different. I mean, there are obviously not going to be events related to the actual season, right? Like combine, draft, training camp, season, those are solid, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of thinking more on the storytelling side of when those aren't prevalent, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, just going back to draft quickly, I mean, that is an
Yeah.
event. So you all preparing for that is super smart. I mean, we see over 500,000 people underestimate what draft
Mm-hmm.
is. If you're not like a true football fan, again, this is
Whew.
part of our storytelling and how we're educating people on like how big and the vastness of the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
500,000 people converge on the city for 3 days. I think over 54 million people tune in to the telecast over the 3 days. And I mean, so this is like a massive event. It's one of the biggest
Yeah.
social events of the year. I mean, I'm talking Grammys, World Series, uh, NBA final. There's a lot of things that are big tempo moments outside of our league that don't draw as much social commentary and conversation than the draft. So that's one of our bigger tempos that we're really, figuring out ways to continue to bring stories in, bring creators in. With the YouTube program, we're going to bring creators out for that as well.
I was going to
Just like
ask.
the
Yeah.
Super Bowl, like that is the thing that's once you get on the ground and you see, it's like, oh, this is a spectacle. This is, like you said, you're meeting people on the street who are hopeful. Like my franchise is going to change. This is the year we finally get it. This is the year we do it, and we're going to draft that person's going to, change the trajectory of our club for the next 5-10 years. Like that's where you draw everyone's, hope and inspiration at the same time. So we love that moment. That's one of my favorite events to attend, and I think the more light we can shine on it, because people think just about the players, but like the fans, right? And one
Mm-hmm.
thing I want to share is, our players are, outside of creators. So we work with creators, and then our players are influencers. We talked about with like the helmet off
Yeah.
storytelling, but the secret weapon, which we're tapping into, kind of thinking about our next strategy, is like our fan storytelling, right? How you became a fan and how you have introduced either your family members or your friends to your club, and how you draw inspiration, whether it's a player. Like I think that's the secret sauce that other leagues maybe have thought about, but we're really focusing on and being intentional about, because those are our biggest spokespeople. You drive around, you see team decals on and bumper stickers and all those things. I'm like, wow, I see that out of season. They don't take them off at the end of football season. So these
Oh.
are evangelists for us, 365, 366 this year. But I think that's something that we really kind of want to hear from, because word of mouth, right? Going back to
Mm-hmm.
marketing, if you think of 101, right? Like the best, marketing is, when you hear from someone that you know and you trust, right? So if our fans can tell you like, I really believe in this guy because did you know his story was X, or I
Yeah.
really, love this. Did you see this play? Let me show you this highlight, right? Think of how many DMs or texts and things you get from friends when they want to show you something that they're passionate about that happened, right? So if our fans can share with their friends, I mean, those are going to be our best advocates and spokespeople. So that's a secret weapon.
Oh yeah, because fandom becomes identity, identity becomes
Mhm.
evangelism, and then you've got, I mean, ardent supporters. I mean, I think it's one of the things. The NFL comes the closest to what European soccer feels like,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah,
that is rooted.
yeah,
That is just generation upon generation upon
yep,
generation of just rooted fandom. The
yep,
NFL is getting there. I mean, like we're our leagues are just younger in
yep,
nature, right? The
mhm,
one thing I was going to say about the draft is like you look back to the early '80s, it's just telephones and a conference
yeah,
room, right?
yeah,
And now it's 500,000 people. So
yeah,
yeah, it's always continuously thinking about evolution. I was going to ask. I mean, I don't know. I want to ask a little deeper, like beyond things you're thinking about creators, are there things that you can talk about that you are contemplating, considering beyond fans, or just specific activations that you think are possible, plausible down the road?
yeah. I think it's gonna go into like what more are we doing with creators, right? I think it's
Yeah.
like the dating stage. You start off with like, you know nothing about us. Okay, cool. Let me introduce you to us and see who we are. Okay, you
Hmm.
like this one specific thing about us, or you like this one club, then we'll do deeper deeper things with this club. But for me and for my team, it's really about like unlocking that storytelling, right? To talk about, like I mentioned, how did you become a fan? We have some creators we work with who are really big NFL fans. So if you can share your story and we can hear from you, like we just recently did a
Yeah.
campaign with the brand where we brought a few artists in, we did a photo shoot, but then we also asked them questions like, how did you become a fan? Like, why did you choose to wear this jersey to represent your team? And,
Yeah.
we may do some more storytelling around that for draft about like, we talked about hope and inspiration. So is the draft going to change the trajectory of your team, or who was a favorite player, in history of your team's franchise that changed the trajectory? Like, who do you want to talk about? So if we can get more into that of the why, because I think that's crucial,
Yeah.
right? I think if we could talk about the why, not just assume that, yeah, I saw X celebrity go to a game, so they're a fan of that team, or why are you a fan of that team versus that team? But like even hearing your story, and like, oh, this guy's from my city, like her cousins is from there, so like I think these are all relatable things. We had one creator talk about LaDainian Tomlinson went to his high school,
Oh,
and he
that was
spoke at his
deep.
graduation, right? And he's from Texas, but LaDainian Tomlinson, obviously played for the Chargers, and so he's like, I'm connected to him
TCU.
because of that, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. TCU. So I think there's a journey that we follow on, and we're doing a lot more, having more exposure to the work that we're doing in college, right? Speaking of TCU, so I think if we can keep telling that story from however however far back it goes for certain people, I think that's going to be important. But also just hearing from people like personal testimonies of like, this is my story. This is how I became a fan. I think that's going to be cool, and it's going to open up or unlock, more people to know that this is real. This is authentic, right? If you're like, oh, they're really a fan. You're not just showing up because, this team is winning. Like you really,
Yeah.
can relate, or you have a friend on that team, or, there's certain things that draw people in, but the more stories we can hear like that, the better.
Well, success creates more success, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
the more you're doing things with creators, right? The more you're intentionally doing this, the more they're going to see the benefit. The more you're going to you're going to have an easier draw every time you have a conversation with them, because it's funny to think, even when you're a brand the size of the NFL or any of the bigger brands that I work with, you still have to pitch. You still
Yeah.
have to have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because but if you've got a demonstrated track record of like, okay, so we worked with person X, Y, and Z, and
Yep.
they did this,
Yep.
then you can just go in there and be like, okay, come on. Just,
Okay.
it's the same thing with this podcast. Like, if we start from the jump and we go, I don't know, it's a podcast, you're going to be like, but if we've had 50 episodes, you're like, oh, okay, yes, I
Yeah.
understand. I will
Yeah.
now join your podcast.
Exactly.
Those things are all the same. The other thing is I'm having one of those moments where I'm realizing I'm getting older, because I'm like, man, I remember when LaDainian Thompson was getting recruited to
Wow.
college. And then I
Yeah.
watched him at TCU. Then I
Yeah.
watched his entire Chargers career, and I was on
Yeah.
TV. And I'm
He's a
like,
Hall of Famer.
no,
Yeah.
no, it's like
No,
generations of
that's
stuff. I'm like, yeah,
that's really, I mean, that's really special just that you've been on that journey. I mean, you could probably speak to it better than most about like, no, I've seen the progression, I've seen the career, I've seen the
hmm
trajectory. And if you go and tell someone that, then I think it's going to be more impactful than, if I just put out a marketing message like, hey, go watch the Chargers, right? But if you could like, I've seen a player have his whole career here and be this, pillar of society. He still goes back and does a lot of work with the Chargers. Like,
yeah.
I think that draws people in to the story.
Not to make it a Chargers podcast, but I mean, if you talk about but if you talk about the Chargers as a franchise, right? Because
Yeah,
again, I'm a person who is from Michigan.
you're right.
I just watched the Chargers, right? I watched both the like all the way from like the Seau Harbaugh era all the way
Uh,
to like you tend to know, if you're a football fan, you tend to know history,
yep.
and the history with the Chargers is always like they're this close. And then
Hmm.
something happens, right? And
Yeah,
I'm just remembering that playoff game with LaDainian and Rivers, and they're both
yeah,
massively hurt, and they're still trying. And Gates is basically on one leg,
yeah,
and they were that close. And now they've got Herbert and they got Harbaugh,
yeah,
and
yeah,
there's hope again. And
yeah,
they're just one of those a relatable franchise. When you're speaking as a Lions fan, you're like, yeah,
yeah.
we tend to find a way to mess it up.
No, I think definitely gonna have an upswing this year.
Oh
But
yeah.
just taking it back to thinking of creators, and we talked about the journey that they take their fans on. I mean, that's essentially what our fans are on. I mean, the ups and down journeys, right? If you think of like I'm a fan of a particular club, like you said, the hopefulness of draft, but also like we're just that close, right? So if you're working
hmm
with these creators, and most of these creators are young and they start off in like small following, and they build, no one's like really like an overnight success, right? So if you get to
No,
see
gosh,
that,
no.
and then we get to introduce you to other teams or creators, and you get to understand that ethos of the team, and knowing that they've always get just a little bit short, right? But if you can get the
hmm
buy-in from these creators, say like, this is the history of this team, and this is what they've been through, this is kind of like their story, right? They're just
Yeah.
like you, right? They're trying to figure it out, and they're almost close, they're trying to break through, they're trying to reach and just tell their story to a new audience. then like people have a lot more buy-in, a lot more vested interest than just like, oh, I'm coming to the game because it's cool. It's like, oh no, I'm rooting for this team. Now I'm cheering. I want to see them. And then you know how it is, like when you meet that celebrity or a person that you're a fan of, and then they're nice or they're cool. You're like, oh, now I really like that person. Now you're
Oh, for
like,
sure.
that's the best person. So if we get to take you out to a game and then you really get to see the people that you're rooting
Hmm.
for, you meet them. Now you're like become a champion for them. So hopefully these creators are now creating content that speaks highly of these clubs. Like, man, this is the year for the Chargers, right? They're finally going to turn it
Yeah.
around. Herbert stays healthy, and this person, Harbaugh, like is coming, and so I think there's a lot of upside when you bring someone kind of early in that process, and they don't know anything about the club, and they get the discovery along the way, and then the clubs keep coming back, like, hey, we're doing a jersey reveal. Do you want to be a part of this? And like, oh wow, now you're bought in. Now you have a vested interest, almost like a partnership with these clubs, and we see it's working successfully with a lot because we see a lot of repeat opportunities for creators. And like I said, we set you up, we match make you, and then you guys take it from there.
Yeah, it's like if somebody's a Game of Thrones fan or like a fan of like role playing games, I'm like, oh, you're not a fan of the NFL? Let me tell you about all the backstories.
Yeah, yeah,
You think it was bad for this group? Let me tell
yeah,
you about how bad it was for the 1990s Buffalo Bills.
yeah, exactly.
These things make it, that's that history, right? To call
Hmm.
upon, right? Yes, if you are younger and you've only just watched the last 6 years, you might think, wow, it's really great to be a Kansas City Chiefs fan. And I would
Yeah,
say, yeah, the 30 years preceding, it's cathartic now
yeah,
after what they went through for 30 years.
yeah.
There are so many of those stories. Like, so storyline is so great in that sport.
Hmm.
I would also say, as you expand globally,
Hmm.
especially that you're in different markets this year.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
the England part you've been doing for a long time, but now that there's the expansion to Germany, there's am I correct with Brazil?
Brazil. Yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, I would assume that those conversations have been being had for a long time about content creators in those specific markets to help grow.
yeah. No, 100%. And we've also like you asked about like learnings from other leagues too. We've talked to and understand kind of like nuances of working with those bigger global massive audiences, and what that means. But I think it always comes back to like authenticity, right? Like if we start going to Brazil and assuming that we're just going to slap on the biggest creator
Yeah.
to work with, then it's not going to feel authentic, right? But there are some that we've already started the longer league conversation with. Come out to our games and experience what this means, bring your audience in. And we have a series where we pair, I think it's called Game Recognized Game, that we do where
Mm.
we pair. We just had Justin Jefferson go to Brazil last year, and he got to work with Vinny Jr. And they did like some really cool content together, playing soccer and doing things. So we're already hedging a little bit to understand like the landscape. But I think it's super smart to to recognize that they're amazing athletes, and we could do Neymar came, we did some stuff with Cooper Cup with the
Hmm.
Rams when I was there. So there's so much that we're similar in a lot of ways. So I think there's also learning capabilities, but I do think the creator landscape over there, I think they'll appreciate the approach that we take with it being authentic, right? And we're not going to approach like, hey, come out to us because now we're the new game in town. Like, no, we respect who
Yeah.
the big dog is in this area, and we're gonna, approach it as such. But come into our world, experience what we're doing. So I think it'll be a good opportunity.
Well, speaking of game recognizes this game, Justin Jefferson. Like, again, I'm a Lions fan, but
Yeah,
Justin Jefferson is not only a good player,
yeah,
he's a really good content creator. Like, that
yeah.
is that is a star right there.
Yeah,
So, I mean, the more stuff he can be doing, awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, and then I think there's probably the reverse takeaway, right? When you watch summer series of EPL teams coming
Hmm.
here,
Yep.
right? Or I think one of the nice things that you do is it's regular season. Like, these
Hmm.
games count.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a nuance that other leagues aren't. I mean, yes, the NBA is doing that. Yes, the NHL is doing that. But you do not see the European leagues coming here and
Hmm.
playing, a regular season game. It's a friendly. Like, I've gone to like a
Yeah,
Liverpool Manchester United game and been like, yeah, okay, yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
It's a novelty, right? That's the interesting thing, right? But it can start as a novelty, but you just have to bring someone in, right?
Hmm.
Because once you bring them in, this is, I think, here's the connection to what we talk about with creators. If you bring in a fan or you bring in a creator just to get the experience, right?
Yeah.
Once they're in with the brand, then the tie to this would be bands that make it on TikTok, right?
Hmm.
There are, TikTok is absolutely launching bands.
Hmm.
Um, And even if there's a dispute about music rights right now and what TikTok's going to use, there's a band right now called The Beaches that like
Mhm.
10 seconds. It's a 10-second clip, but now they're going viral, and they've been
Yeah.
around for 10 years.
Wow.
The interesting thing about what TikTok can do is, and artists will complain, they'll be like, but you're only like, I think Steve Lacy has this really good quote where he's like, yeah, you only want to listen to my 12 seconds of my song, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But what it does make you do is it makes you go through the whole discography. It makes you,
Yeah.
start doing a deeper dive. And
Yeah.
so I think that's the same thing with content creators, right? You get them
Mhm.
involved. Hopefully they want to take a deeper dive. You get
Yeah.
people in Brazil or Mexico or Germany
Yeah.
or England. Hopefully
Yeah.
they want to take a deeper dive into, the brand and the history.
Yeah. No, I mean that's I mean, people probably way more versed in it than me set that up and plan that. But yeah, that's it. I mean, give them a sample size of it, give them an offering of it, and hope they
Hmm.
want more. I mean, you've seen, it was Country Road that they were singing in Germany, right? Like
Yeah.
they're I mean, they want it. They're open to it, and they see, US coming to any market. I think people respect and understand the work that we're doing. But the game, I think the more people see the game and experience it, and like you said, it's early getting a sample size. It is in season, but maybe eventually it turns it's a playoff game, right? And then when like the stakes are a little
Mm.
bit higher, right? Then it's like, okay, now we're really intentional about bringing this game over. So a lot will probably have to learnings before we get to that point. But an
Yeah.
international Super Bowl, what do what are the odds in that happening?
Mm.
That could be pretty ridiculous,
That'd be
So
dope.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there are options, and that's the cool thing. Martin, when I close this, I do something called keep it short. There are
yeah.
3 questions that are incredibly short, but your answers can be however long you would like.
I'll
Are
keep it
you
short.
ready?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Um, Favorite content creator moment since you've been there?
Whew.
And, and you would think that this is not a hard question, except that this means that you have to say which one you like the most, which does make it a hard question.
Yeah, I have to pick a favorite child.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I'll use the one most recent we had at Super Bowl. So we've grown, and I talked about like eventizing and taking our activations, outside the season. But what we've done, for our tempos, anyways, we created this flag football game with creators. And
Mm,
it grew year after year. I think it started in LA. We had content creators. We had legend quarterbacks. We had Mike Vick. It's
nice.
been a bunch of years. Brett Favre. We had a bunch of legend QBs throw into content creators, right? So that's really, it's really funny. But year before a draft, we did it in Kansas City. We had RG3 and Mike Vick quarterback, a game with AMP versus RDC World. Really great game. We got to play at Arrowhead Stadium, so it was like
Mm,
it's growing. So this past Super Bowl, we did the game, and it just blew up. It was in Vegas, and then we had Metro Boomin, who's one of the hottest artists,
mm-hmm,
out,
mm-hmm.
producers out with 21 Savage. So it became their game against each other. But they invited a bunch of creators, a bunch of other artists to be in the game. And when I
Perfect.
tell you the conversation and the traffic that really cut through, which was already a crazy Vegas Super Bowl with Usher performing, and we had
Hmm.
Keith Lee to
Oh
Toby
man.
Bigway and JID, Wale, and in the 21 and Metro, and like a bunch of friends and like a bunch of other artists and creators. And I say all that to say is like we play flag football. We get to grow
Mm,
the game of flag football. We get to use our creator network to bring out big name artists to work with us and grow the game of flag, which is going to be in the Olympics in 2028,
mm-hmm.
and just showcase the work we're doing and just show the growth, right, of a game that started with like an idea, like, oh, maybe we'll have these creator collectives play, but now it's like artists. So now we're like, how do we up level that? How do we take this to the next stage, and what are we doing for New Orleans? So now we're already thinking, how do we sell tickets and make this an event? Maybe we do it in the off season, right? Like I talked about our off season
Yeah.
plan to keep the game live and vibrant. So anything we could do where we involve, a plethora of creators is always great. So that would be like the favorite one, outside of what we're doing, obviously, with Creator of the Week during the season. But
Yeah.
again, if we can keep something going even during the off season, I think we're marching towards the right beat. So hopefully I answered that question.
Oh no, that's perfect. Well, I
Okay.
mean, that's that's the best definition of a strategy, right? Is that if you got a couple draws, right? In this case, Metro Boomin, 21 Savage, right? And
Yeah.
then Keith Lee's obviously from Vegas. But if
Yeah.
you've got a couple draws and then you're like, hey, you understand the value, we
Yeah.
understand your value, bring your friends, right?
Yeah.
Because then you don't have to individually reach out to 30 people.
There you go.
You're just reaching out to 2 people, and like
Yeah.
then you're like, hey, and then you go to your friends and be like, hey, I got this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the definition of making your life easier. If you can do it, if you can pull it off, if you A, have the right brand, and B, have the right people, then yes, you don't have to make so many individual calls, which is wonderful.
Yes.
Question 2, not to assume that you grew up a huge NFL fan, but do you have a favorite moment, play, piece of NFL history?
That's funny. When you said piece of NFL history, made me think of this. So we recently did a campaign where, again, storytelling.
Yeah.
We partnered with the brand Michelin S to tell an authentic story of a kid growing up in his local neighborhood and getting his fandom from his local barbershop. So it was a throwback 2001 commercial set in LA, and this kid goes to barbershop every week, and the older guys, they're talking about sports, and this was in 2001. So Michael Vick was coming to the draft, and I think Ocho Cinco was in that draft, and I think LT may have been in that draft too, 01.
So around the era, yeah.
They talked about a couple guys that were coming into the league, but they also talked about some of the older guys. And one of the older guys they talked about at the time was Warren Moon. So I think it was like the Ravens just won a Super Bowl. So they were talking. It was like barbershop conversation. So essentially, at the end of the spot, one of the guys had on a Warren Moon jersey, and I love this Warren Moon jersey. It's just iconic, just in the culture. Friend of mine, Rich Paul, has a great story about how he wore a Warren Moon jersey and LeBron discovered, so that's a whole other story. So Warren Moon,
is it the Oilers jersey?
Yeah, the Houston Oilers jersey, the number one, the powder blue Houston Oilers jersey is beautiful.
Classic.
Yeah, just stood out. So we actually had that as like the last shot of the commercial. The guy puts on his Warren Moon jersey, and he just kind of looks out the street, and then have this beautiful Jay-Z song playing. It's just a really cool. I'll send you the commercial spot we did. Yeah. And then 2 weeks later, I just get an email from someone on one of the teams over here, and it was like, hey, we're doing an event at the office. Want you to stop by. Warren Moon's going to be here. I was like, are you kidding me? So I got a jersey sent to me, Warren Moon jersey, got to meet Warren, had him sign autograph. Oh, and I should mention, as a kid, he was one of my favorite players growing up. So I didn't grow up as an NFL fan, but the Houston Oilers definitely, Warren Moon, Randall Cunningham, a lot of guys in that era were just game changers for me. And to have that full circle moment, to shoot a campaign about NFL storytelling, and then to meet him, and then to say hey, I was a huge fan of yours growing up, one of few fans, and then can you, here's a jersey I have of yours, and he signed it. He was like, great. He was like, send me that commercial too, by the way. So yeah, we're that was my biggest and best full circle moment I've had since I've been here at any in and around the league.
I mean, to bring it full circle just in this podcast, again, if you meet someone and have a really positive interaction with them,
you go.
This is the thing, big or small, as a human being, right? Yeah. What I've learned over the course of any time interviewing people or encountering people is that the ones that can just be present for 15 seconds even, right? Just be present. Man, does that make a difference. It's incredible. Question 3. What makes you most excited for the upcoming season?
Storylines. I think you said it right. If we don't craft them, right? Contrary to popular belief, people think that
shouts to Arian Foster.
I have a somewhere around here. But I think I don't know how it happens, right? But every year there's always, we find, some really great storylines. Who would have predicted, what happened with the Taylor Swarm last year? That was the gift that just kind of fell in our lap. So we're grateful for that. But there's so many guys, and just seeing, guys are really leaning into fashion, right? There's going to be a bunch of guys going to Tokyo and in different fashion weeks throughout the off season in New York and Paris and London, and do all that stuff, right? So that's a whole different thing. And guys are, very entrepreneurial and starting businesses and creating, opportunities. Talk to one of the guys, Bobby Wagner, he's going back to school for his MBA and doing, so there's a bunch of different things that guys are doing that are gonna increase the storylines, right? So I know there's gonna be another in-season Hard Knocks. There's another not quarterback but a wide receiver series coming up, right? So we're gonna delve more into the
Mm-hmm.
storylines of receivers, and I think the more we can get invested into who these players are, because these are ultimate creators, these are ultimate spokespeople. People are tuning in for the game because yes, their athletic prowess, but also, I follow that person because they're from my city or they went to my college, or, I just like, their swagger, like where's OBJ going to play next year, right? So there's these storylines
Yeah.
that are just inherent that draw you in. So I'm excited. I don't know what they are yet, but I'm happy to see like what's going to be the story, right? Are the Chiefs going to three-peat, right? That's already one story that we're already kind of invested in. So who's coming out of the draft, right? Like, what's the story going to be with the rookies, right? CJ Stroud had an amazing year.
Yeah.
Funny story, we flew, a guy on my team, we flew to draft out of a small airport in LA. I think it was Anaheim Airport, to go to Kansas City because there weren't too many direct out of LA. We flew on a flight. I won't name the airline, but CJ Stroud was on our flight just by himself,
Yeah.
going to, flying to Kansas City. And we're like, you're probably going to be like one of the top draft picks. And we're just like randomly flying on the flight together. So to
Just
see,
random.
again, met him, super nice guy, exchange information, still in contact to this day. For him to become, have a stellar year. Like, so who's going to come out of this draft and have an amazing year? So the storylines are really, the more I get invested in just the game, it's like, oh, these are really what people look forward to, right? I'm watching the game, because I want to see like these amazing stories and what unfolds. Quarterback changes, Russell Wilson, that's going to be an interesting storyline next year. So there's just,
Yeah.
it's like drama. Like I come from that TV and film world too. So I love to see like, the drama unfold and the comedy and all the things that make for just like a beautiful story.
I've told people for a long time, like, and this is not untrue, that the NBA and the NFL are like my version of Real Housewives. Like, it's like, because I can start to tell you, especially
Yeah.
NBA more so, but definitely NFL. Like, I can be like, okay, this is why this person doesn't like this person. This is
Yeah.
why there's a whole thing. This is the thing.
That's good.
But
Yeah, that's
I think
good.
there's also, to wrap it, like, there's a testament to the creators even inside your player community, right? Because
Yeah.
if you look at Ryan Clark and Pivot,
Mhm.
we alluded to Arian Foster. And by the way, shouts to the NFL for being self-deprecating and
Yeah.
actually making commercials about
Leaning
the
into
script thing, because
yeah.
that was next level. But
Yeah.
you look at the Kelsey brothers or Bussin' with
Yeah.
the Boys, a
Yeah.
lot of ex-players or just recently retired players, or in the case of
Yeah.
Travis, still playing,
Yeah.
are creating businesses. They're creating
Yeah.
podcasts. They're creating media
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah.
I'm super impressed with Omaha Productions and what the
Yeah.
Manning brothers have done. So the NFL is not only a platform for creators, it's a platform for players to become creators, right? So I'm going to assume that the more, again, success creates success. And so
Yeah.
if you've got these players who are seeing this happen, then I'm
Yeah.
going to assume that they're like, yes, give me the opportunity. Let me go
Yeah.
out there and create that brand.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it also unlocks for them to show more of their personality, right? I think
Yeah.
in the early days when clubs would ask their players to do things like, and
Yeah.
not in a bad way, right? So I'm like, I'm just focused on the game. That's not really my thing. But now, like you said, there's so many opportunities post career, and there's
Mm-hmm.
longevity, and it probably don't have to take the same amount of hits, and to just show yourself. And like we talked about before, no matter who you are, there's something about you that's relatable to an audience, right? So you may
Absolutely.
not think that you're the biggest personality or, on camera host, but you have this fashion sense, or you're a
Mm-hmm.
collector of, certain items, and someone else could be into that. So just showcasing that and who you are, that's going to draw people in. So yeah, start showing more of who you are and being authentic. And I think that's going to draw you in, and then we'll amplify that, right? Because we're a huge media company. Like, we're going to put you with the biggest, you're into this. All right, let's connect you with the biggest person in that field
Yeah.
so you can amplify your passion project or your habit. Yeah.
Well, I think the teams and the coaching staffs have also recognized this over the last 10 years, right? That, you want to bring in free agents, you want people to
Yeah.
play for you. Yes, obviously, football requires an intense amount of focus and it requires some discipline,
Yeah.
but allowing people to be marketable, allowing people to
Yeah.
be out there, right? Fostering that, right?
Yeah.
Creates something that allows you to grow as a team, right? If you
Yeah.
if you just stifle people and say we're on to Cincinnati, well, that's it's not as good of a soundbite as what you could
Yeah.
possibly give. And so I think it is all working well together. I'm super excited about every one of these storylines. Martin, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This has been a true pleasure, and I love, I got to talk about the work that we do, and it reminds me of the opportunity that we get to do this work, right? Not that we have
Yeah,
to. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
well said. Thank you.
Thank you.